Okay, so you have a guitar amp, possibly a guitar head, and it sounds great, sounds fantastic. How do you connect it to your computer so you can get it into a DAW, and why would you want to do that? Let's look at a couple of reasons and a couple of solutions to that today. Firstly, why might you want to do that? Well, a couple of different reasons. Firstly, guitar amps, heads, are often tube, and to sound really good, you need to turn them up really loud. And that often doesn't work in a home environment. You know, you're in an apartment, even if you're in a house with space, you might have neighbors, or you just don't want to kill your ears. So reducing or attenuating that volume while still having the amp running is one way you might want to do this. The other one, of course, to record your guitar. How do you record it? Sometimes, you don't have the benefit of having an isolation booth, with guitar microphones and all those sorts of things, but you still want to record your great amp. Obviously, once you get it into a recording, well, then maybe you can add effects and all those sorts of things because you want to record a drier signal. So all these reasons, you might want to connect your guitar head to your amplifier. Okay, so there's some different ways to do this. Some of the more modern amps with these sort of digital circuitry have things like USB connections. The Boss Katana has that, and other sort of amps. You can use that. We're not talking about that today, though. We're talking about sort of I don't want to say old school, but we're talking about a tube amplifier there, whether it's master volume or what have you, where that's what we're talking about today. So don't forget, tube amps, they really need to be turned up loud to get cooking. Even if you have a master volume amp where you can turn the channel volume up nice and loud to get those tubes nice and toasty, when you turn that master volume up even just a smidge, it's extremely loud. It's deafening. It depends what sort of amp you've got, of course, but anything sort of 50 watts or above is way too big. Even 20 watts can be deafening in a small room. So attenuating is one of our goals for sure. First thing you need, obviously, is a guitar head. Okay, that's number one. Number two, you need a load box, preferably a reactive load box. We can talk about that in a second. Thirdly, you need an audio interface. You can't plug a guitar straight into a sound card. You need an audio interface, but they're dirt cheap and really great these days. Then, of course, you need software. So a DAW or some sort of a digital audio workstation, especially obviously if you want to record, that's what you need. And then you need impulse responses, or IRs. We're going to look at that as well. Okay, so the guitar head. Guitar head has speaker outputs. If you have a guitar head, you obviously know what this is. You will go out of your guitar head into a speaker cabinet. But what we're trying to do today is we're going to try and do this without the speaker cabinet. We're taking the cabinet out of the equation. But that guitar head has to have somewhere to send that output load. Okay, never ever plug in a head, turn it on, where you don't have anything plugged into the speaker out. Okay, bad things are going to happen, so don't do that. Okay, secondly, you cannot connect the speaker output of a head into your audio interface. That doesn't work. The audio interface isn't set up to handle load from a guitar head, so don't do that. Okay, so we're looking at a load box. A load box is designed to take that output load based on different impedances, depending on what your head is, to take that output load and attenuate it. So it sort of it takes the place of a guitar cabinet at one level. Okay, that's what we're going to be looking at today. So there are two types of load boxes, a resistive load box or a reactive load box. Reactive is what you want. Impedances sort of fluctuate as you play, different dynamics, different sort of tones and timbres and all that sorts of things. So if you're in the market for a load box, make sure you're looking for a reactive load box. The good news is the market is now filled with really great options. You've got sort of the almost the industry standard of the universal audio aux box, but you've got tons of other ones from Surf, from Fryette. So reactive load box is what you want to do. Okay, and what they allow you to do is to attenuate the signal. You can send your signal from the head to the load box and turn it down. So you can still have the amp cooking and toasting nice and beautifully, but you're turning it down at a much lower box. Okay, much lower level. Okay, so these are perfect for home recording. They're perfect for sort of practice usage without sacrificing your tone. For recording, they're fantastic. You can get a signal out into your DAW. That's what we're looking at today. Now, some of these have IRs or impulse responses inside them, so it's sort of a one-stop shop. Doesn't matter if you have one that doesn't come with IRs, there's plenty available online, whether they're free or to purchase. So we'll look at that as well. All right, as we said, the next thing you need is an audio interface, and that just allows you to connect something into the computer. It could be a guitar, could be a keyboard, could be a MIDI controller, those sorts of things. But it accepts sort of input from one thing and gets it into your computer. Audio interfaces are really cheap. You've got the Focusrite series, which are great, but you can spend a little or a lot. Normally, the price difference with audio interfaces, to be honest, are around number of inputs, number of outputs. But if you're just starting out, 1 or 2 inputs is absolutely fine. 2 outputs is probably fine. But if you want to, record a band situation with a lot of live instruments, you're going to need those more inputs. You're going to need more outputs. But in terms of the preamps there, look, depending on who you read, there might be a difference, but it's slight. The more entry-level audio interfaces are pretty great these days. All right, let's just talk about cables really quickly as well before we get into how to connect. You've got 2 types of cables. You've got a speaker cable and you've got a regular instrument cable. They're both 1/4 inch, so they look exactly the same. The difference is speaker cables have different levels of shielding than instrument cables. And what you're going to want to do is make sure when you're plugging into a head into a speaker cabinet, or in this case, a head to the load box, use a speaker cable. So just pick one up, label it so it's a speaker cable, and that's going to be what you need there. Beyond that, we're all standard 1/4 inch instrument cables. Okay, so connecting, let's look at that. Okay, the connection is relatively straightforward, particularly if you're used to a head with a speaker box. Okay, your guitar, as usual, is going to go straight into the head. The speaker out, using a speaker cable, the speaker out is going to go out into not a speaker box, but into your load box. Now you need to make sure the impedance matches. So whether you're 4 ohms, 8 ohms, 16 ohms. Okay, speaker out into the amp in on your load box. Okay, lastly from there, you're going to go take a line out from your load box and you're going to go into an input on your audio interface. In terms of hardware, that's it. Now, in terms of managing volume levels, again, the beauty of this is that the load box is taking the load and it's doing the attenuation, essentially silent recording if you want. So you are going to set your amp as you would to get the tone that you need. So you can crank your channel volume or your master volume, whatever you need, and crank that. You're going to be managing the gain that's coming out of your speaker monitors via the input control or the gain control on your audio interface. So for me, I'm using a Focusrite. It's a Scarlett. It's an entry-level 2i4, nice and straightforward. Okay, so I plug into input 1 and my gain is really low. It's only a smidge up. And from there, that will make sure that you're not clipping as you go into your DAW. All right, now that you have got that hardware sort of organized, let's move over to the computer. For me, I'm using Logic Pro. We're going to look at how to get that input and make it sound really, really nice, because it's not going to sound nice by default. Okay, so for me, I'm using Logic Pro. You might be using, Reaper or Ableton or Cubase or what have you. The theory is the same. Maybe the plugins or the terminology might differ depending on the DAW you're using. Okay, so again, guitar into amp, amp to load box to interface. And now what do you do? Okay, so for me, I'm gonna do a new audio track. Pretty simple, and there we go. Audio 2 is created. Now, if I play, turn on my guitar volume, start playing. Okay, you can see something's coming in, but you can't hear anything. So firstly, you've got to turn on input monitoring. Pretty simple. Okay, and there you've got kind of the worst sound in the world. That's actually what your guitar amp is sounding like without a speaker cabinet. So this is where impulse responses come into play. Now, if you go, again, in Logic, go down to your track here, and you can go to Audio Effects. In Logic, we have an IR loader by default, comes by default there, and it's actually Space Designer, okay? So if I turn on Space Designer, I'm going to get this sound. Okay, so there's reverb there, but underlying the guitar sound is still really, really lousy. So what you're going to do here is open this menu in the middle and choose Load IR. Okay, now for me, I have a bunch of IRs available that I've downloaded. There's a ton just here. I'm just going to choose one that I know kind of works, but again, this is, you can choose whichever one you want. So from Tone Junkie, they've got some great impulse responses there. This is part of their free pack. The Fat SM57 I know works really, really well. So I'm going to open that up, and straight away now my guitar sounds like this. Okay, so now I've got an IR loaded. Now IRs, again, they are basically digital pictures of a cabinet. It's been mic'd up, it's been put in a room, and sort of that tone print has been saved, and you can now apply that to your raw amp signal that's coming in, which is pretty amazing. If you want to do a quad box 412, you can try that with different speakers, vintage, greenback, whatever you want. If you want to do a 212, 410, a 110, you can try all sorts of different things. It's pretty amazing, you know, the world we're living in right now with technology. So my recommendation is experiment. Get a bunch of IRs that you like, try them, store your favorites, and then whenever you want something different, you can mix and match. All right, so don't forget scenarios. For me, what I want is primarily two things. I want to be able to crank an amp and have it at a manageable volume level. And I also want to record. Both of those scenarios mean I want, I want a good sound. Now, the benefit of plugging a raw sound into your audio interface, into your computer, and managing it all in your DAW is that you can turn on effects in your DAW, but then shut them off or change them after you've recorded a sound. So after you've recorded your guitar signal, you can change your IR and pretty fundamentally change the sound of the amp all after your performance. If you want to play with reverbs and delays and tremolos or whatever other effects, other software that you can install in your DAW, you can take the same approach. You can record with live monitoring with whatever you want. You want to be inspired by your tone, right? But you can mix and match them after the fact. So for example, here, I don't like this reverb that's there at the moment, so let's try something a little bit different. Okay, so I'm going to close that down, but I typically don't like a dry sound. It's sort of not too inspiring. Right, so I'm going to go and choose a reverb. Again, in Logic. Logic comes with a bunch of pre-built plugins that sound pretty great. Let's see what this sounds like by default. Not so fantastic. All right, straight away for me, I like a longer decay on reverbs, and wet, I'm going to turn that right down. Okay, so now you're in the ballpark. Might turn it down a little bit more. Go down maybe to 6%. Okay, so again, you can play with all those sorts of things. Now that you've done that, what you want to do is really save this as a channel strip setting. That way, when you plug in your guitar again, you don't have to turn on your IR loader from scratch and turn on a reverb or delays or whatever else you've got. So you can come to settings here and you can do save channel strip settings as. You can see I already have one. That's my impulse response plus reverb. Okay, so that's it. Plugging your guitar into head, into reactive load box, into interface, and then you've got magic. You can get some great sounds in your interface coming from your head, but at a manageable level, especially for recording. It is great. Good luck. Any comments, leave them down below. Other than that, I'll see you next time.